Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. People know me because I've produced this book for my good friend Tony McGurn. It's called And That's How It All Started. It's his life story from 1941 up until recently, all real and true stories from growing up in Ireland, then coming to New York, taxi driver, truck driver, being down south during the Troubles, and lots of shenanigans. It is adult content, so be careful, you might as well confessions. My sponsors are Liffey Movers, a moving company here in New York City, and they've been around, as long as sliced bread. And they do butter my bread, so I have to be nice to them. They are experienced, so when it comes to moving, let Liffey do the lifting. I do have interest in people on every week, or thereabouts, to talk about various things going on in their life. Each one has their own story, and each one is different. And for example, a few months back, I had a clown on, Ed Malone. He's a professional clown. He studied in Paris. It's the only university in the world that is a university for clowns. And you would imagine they should have one in Washington. But in any event, there's enough material in Washington to make a clown. But my guest today is David Corbett, and he is a cartoon artist, among other things. We'll talk about the other things later. But David, welcome to my podcast. It's called It's Good to Talk. And David, you're welcome to be on this podcast. Hello and good morning.
Hello, thank you, John.
Now, tell us, where were you born and how did you get into cartoons?
Well, raised up in the Buffalo, New York area, and my cartooning probably started only maybe 5, 8, 10 years ago.
Okay.
But really kind of it's taken off, and I really enjoy doing it.
Okay, but did somebody influence you originally, or you just a natural gift?
Probably not on the cartoon side, but on the humor side.
Okay.
I would really enjoy, Johnny Carson, all the old Rodney Dangerfield, a lot of comics and different styles of comedy.
Okay, like Bob Hope, for example, and people like the quick wit
Yeah.
type humor.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes a lot of creativity. And then how did you marry the humor to the cartoon?
Well, I started doodling probably 20 years ago, and as time has progressed, my style has kind of evolved and kind of become what it is today, which is really a minimalist style.
Right. Okay, I run a lot of art shows in New York City, so I'm familiar with a lot of different styles and different people and different artists too. And what I find with some of my artist friends is people that do abstract art and stuff like that, or more serious art like portraits and all that. Some of them don't know how to value their work. Okay, and my background is marketing, so I try and help them in that regard. So I say, if it took you 5 minutes, it's worth $40. If it took you a week, it's probably worth $400. How do you value your art?
Well, as far as the time it takes to me to make them, I can rip off a cartoon really, really fast. It's one of the fun things that I'm known for, going to parties or to a bar. So it doesn't take me very long to have the joke in my head and the corresponding artwork to go with the joke.
Okay, that's a talent in itself. So clearly that takes the creativity side there, which you seemingly obviously have, and then your cartoon style is like you. I'll talk about some of your art in a second, because I've looked through a lot of them, and I did mention earlier on there, for example, Liffey Van Line's the moving company, and they've been around since sliced bread. And I noticed one of your art pieces has a cartoon that's looking. You have two characters looking at a sliced loaf of bread, and they're amazed. And it goes back to whenever sliced bread was invented. So that one I found pretty good. Also, I noticed you seem to do themes, like you do the seasons, like Christmas, I guess, and Halloween, and maybe weddings and whatever the occasion is. And then I saw, which is one of my favorites, maybe, is you hit the music world. You have another sketch, we'll call it, where you have a mother asking a young man, what time will he be home for dinner? And the young guy is singing the song, It's Going to Be a Long, Long Time. And that comes from The Rocket Man, a song by Elton John, which is pretty creative. And you must be an Elton John fan, I guess. So explain some more of the themes, the themes you use.
I've counted up recently, and I think I have about 150 different themes. And where a lot of these come from is something I do on Sunday mornings. I use Facebook for it. We call it Custom Cartoon Sunday. So I'll establish a theme, For example, it could be Christmas, it could be hotels or bed and breakfast, it could be accountants, um, different kinds of romance. And so I'll establish a theme at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll have upwards of 20, 30, 40 people will submit a word that'll match the theme, and then I come up with something creative. And that creativity is just fun. I have people watching literally all over the world as this goes on.
So is that like kind of then from the point of view of the people, it seems to me like you're up all night like Trump doing this work, but that will leave him alone because he has enough headaches. But you're up all night creating this stuff. The people then that partake in it, that's like improv, I guess. Like they have to be spontaneous in their thoughts that fits into the thought that you gave them. It's like you say a word, and then they have to add to it in an open mic format. You say, is that right?
It's very interactive. You're right, and and they don't know what I'm going to come up with. I can even do them on difficult topics as well, even health problems.
Okay, that's pretty. I've in my podcast here, it's good to talk. I have interviewed people from pretty much everything you could imagine, from health and wellness to cancer research to suicide prevention, accountants, lawyers, you name it, wills, trusts, and estates. And speaking of wills, trusts, and estates, you did another cartoon that I liked. It's like a young grandchild talking to his grandmother, explaining that the grandfather is going to leave everything to her when he dies. And the grandkid is talking to the grandmother saying, and when you die, grandma, then I get everything. And life is pretty much like that, you know. So you bring it a hint of humor and a hint of reality to the cartoon. You can expand more on that idea.
Almost in every situation. Yesterday, I happened to be sitting in the dentist chair.
Okay.
And as I'm sitting there, I'm getting a text from my real estate agent telling me he needs to get a response or some kind of a counter offer within the next 15 minutes, or they're going to take the other offer. Well, I can't even talk. I got stuff in my mouth.
Okay.
And then just with the texting, he said, I expect to see a cartoon about this in about 20 minutes. And of course I did. So that kind of speed is a lot of fun, and it has spurred on having well over 100 different themes or categories.
Categories, yeah. I also know from my own research, I did a little bit of research. I don't do much. I'm pretty much like you in a way. It's everything is kind of off the cuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you run events like for the cartoon events. Are you like, is it a show you run yourself, or are there other people in the cartoon world involved?
I haven't done a group show, but I have done quite a few cartoon exhibits or shows. We'll have
Right.
300 or 400 of the cartoons, all mounted nicely on walls.
I saw that, yeah.
Wine and cheese, and people coming in to
Right.
look at them, and they'll call their friend over to say, "Oh, look at this one," and not everyone's going to get every joke, but they're a lot of fun to do, and they're pop-ups. They
Well,
for 2 days.
yeah, that's the whole surprise of it. I mean, even here in New York City in the Metropolitan Museum, there was a married couple staring at a wall one day, and there wasn't too much on it, but they were amazed. And then there was a fly stuck to a painting, and the fly flew away, and that was the end of that abstract moment. So people do get their own humor. They take their own humor out of it, but that's what art is all about. What you see and what I see can be two different things. But it's good to talk. It's good to laugh too. And my guest is David Corbett. He's a cartoon artist. I'm happy to have him on here today, and it's good to talk. And if you like this episode, hit subscribe. It's free to do that, and you'll get more podcasts. So back to you, David. So in terms of getting your work out there, have you published any stuff? Have you put it into magazines? Like the New Yorker has some really good cartoons from time to time, and various magazines, and even some of the newspapers. Like there's so much going on in the political world, you're not short for political cartoons.
Right. I have been published, and I do use the name Elwin for my cartoons instead of my own name.
Okay.
And if you wonder where that came from, my grandfather's name was Elwin, Elwin. And I figured it's not a very common name, so it's also a single name. So if I ever got to be world famous, I could be like Cher or Sting, with one word, and Calvin.
Okay.
So that's
Or like Bono.
or Bono, yeah.
Bono, yeah. Well, Bono thinks he's God, and I honestly believe Bono is God. I don't believe in God. I believe in Bono because I see him a lot, and I think he's a talented man like yourself. He's creative, and he does a lot of good stuff, and he does create a bit of humor from time to time, to say the least. But getting away from Bono and God and back to you, let's talk a little bit more about some of the teams. I saw another team you ran. It was getting to religion. It was on a IKEA, like a bit of humor about IKEA. So it's a lady putting together a piece of furniture from IKEA, and just like me, she's frustrated with all the screws and the instructions, and she can't put it together. And she says something like, "Whatever happened, to Jesus? I thought his father was a carpenter. Why didn't he become a carpenter and save me all this trouble?" You remember that one?
Yeah, that's you're fairly close, but we'll have to take a look at the cartoon to see. Yeah, I think it was Jesus was the actual carpenter, and he was frustrated and decided to give up carpentry.
All right. So you can see how somebody can misinterpret. Yeah, it happens.
You would ask about
like,
being,
you go ahead.
I'm sorry, you would ask about being published, and I have had some good success with publishing in newspapers, online,
Okay.
for more money than I was expecting. So that was kind of,
That's
nice.
always a surprise. That's always a bonus. Yeah, bonus being the appropriate word.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have other people? Like, do you have favorites yourself that are cartoon artists?
Well, strangely, I don't like to look at other cartoonists' work. I kind of
Well,
I avoid it.
I have to admire you for that because, like, my podcast is my style and I do it. I do listen to some podcasts, but I don't try to copy them or their style, and they're good. I can name a few here if people are into the Irish team, like Irish Stews, a podcast here in New York. It's organized by two Irish guys. They're part of the IBO, which is an Irish business organization. Another one by Paul Finnegan is called Centerpiece, but they're different style. They they speak slower than me, and they talk longer than me, and everything seems to be elegantigated or something like that. A word I don't pronounce too well. And theirs is a bit slow, and I use it sometimes for going to sleep. That's a compliment, not being sarcastic. I can be too sometimes. So getting back to you a little bit more, in other aspects of your career, I noticed that you also do writing. Okay, and you're involved with some magazine. I know you're also involved with cars, like the Rolls Royce. Is your why Rolls Royce?
I think I've liked the cars, like all cars, since I was a little kid. And I was always intrigued by the Rolls-Royce brand, even with a little Matchbox car zipping across the floor.
Okay.
I find the people that own them and appreciate the cars are interesting people, quite often very accomplished in a variety of ways in their lives, but just the way they look at life and the way the cars are designed. So I think I enjoy the people far more than the mechanics.
Okay, that's extremely interesting point of view because my nephew in particular, his ears now will be like satellite dishes, getting the praise from you, saying that he's interesting and not boring because he's a car buff, as we call it, and he loves his cars, of course. And sometimes people, like say, design cars and stuff like that, and it's not they don't really design it, but they take the credit for it. Okay, so you can create a cartoon from this one if you want after our podcast, of course. It's like Adolf Hitler gets the credit for inventing the Volkswagen car, which is called the people's car. But now, the more I look at or reflect on Adolf Hitler and the lunatic that he was, I have a feeling that his engineers designed the Volkswagen and he put his name to it. So that's a cartoon view. Now, sorry?
No, yeah, I would agree.
You would agree. Thank you very much. Um, so there's you mentioned some of the magazines, you mentioned some publications. Um, so let's talk more of where people can get to see your stuff. The Facebook, tell us about the Facebook thing again. That's on a Sunday morning, you say?
Yeah, my Facebook page is Dave Corbett, Dave. My nephew has David. same name. So I'm using Dave Corbett for Facebook, and I'm dressed up in a tan suit, standing next to a boat harbor. So if you're looking for me, it's pretty easy to find.
Okay. And then that is like kind of an ad lib one where you create a
Right.
theme and people have to give you the in word or the clue, and then you create a cartoon from it.
Where this started from, I first started going through the alphabet. So each week would be A. The next week was a word starting with the letter B, and people
Okay.
were giving me obscure words I never ever heard of the words, and
Okay.
I would look them up and try to find something funny about that word. But after going through the alphabet, we had to try something else.
Okay. That's like a word sometimes I kind of use, not too often. Goobu. You know what goobu means?
No.
There you go. See, I got you there now.
Yeah.
But goobu is a word that was created in Ireland where there was a strange political scene where a dead body was found, I think, in the ambassador's home, and the ambassador was at JFK, and the body was found in his home in Dublin. And the Prime Minister at the time, Charles J. Healy, was asked what did he think, and he called it grotesque, unbelievable, bizarre, and unprecedented. So another journalist like yourself, somewhat, and you look like him, created the word gubu, which is like Gubu, a bit like snafu, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But snafu could have worked too, you know. Situation normal, all fucked up, you know. So there's two words that you can apply to your cartoons. So tell me more where people can reach out to you or get to. You explained your Facebook thing, and that's on a Sunday morning at what time?
I start about 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, and people can then plug in and give you their answer to whatever the riddle or the problem is. Okay.
Right, but my goal is to have a lot more publishing, and we've had our cartoons in magazines and newspapers, some online. There was one friend from our car club who contacted a fellow who is the chairman of a wealth management company, and I was honored that my cartoon bumped off the New Yorker cartoon for one of their newsletters.
Fantastic.
It may have been about inflation or some other topic that
Yes.
was relevant to the
At the
topic.
time, yeah.
Uh,
Well, speaking of inflation, one of my earlier podcasts in I think January, February is sometimes I like to play with my tarot cards, and I made a prediction in January that inflation was going to be coming down a lot, and we'd have no recession. And not like other economists who tend to speculate and like not give any backup. I predicted my views on inflation and recession based on, of all things, eggs and the price of gas, because the price of eggs went sky high because the hens were dying off, but hens come back again and they lay more eggs.
mm-hmm.
So there was an oversupply of eggs. Price of eggs come down. The price of oil is coming down. And when getting back to your car theory, when more electric cars get on the road, the price of oil will come down. And then people in certain parts of the world, meaning Saudi Arabia, will have more issues with water rather than oil. Anyways, that's my rant for today. For you, my guest is David Corbett, and we on the podcast it's good to talk, and it sure is good to talk. It's good to laugh too, and that's why I kind of enjoy your cartoons. Let me see, did I leave any cartoon out that I liked? I liked the one about I think it was called Make Me Beautiful or something.
Oh
Sliced
yes,
bread.
yeah, Leonardo da Vinci with the Mona Lisa.
I like that one too with Mona Lisa. Yeah, that was a good one, Leo. Yeah. There's hundreds of cartoons there. I can tell my listeners, hundreds of cartoons there to go through. I guess on your Facebook thing and get them there. And where else can they get you? They get your Facebook on Sundays anyway.
Well, we're putting together a website right now so that really to expand where we are going to be published in magazines, newspapers, or online.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So this podcast will go out soon, and you can. There's a comment section in the podcasting, and when you have your website up, you can add it there anytime you want for
all right,
people to get you.
thank you.
And I'm glad to have you as a guest today. So David Corbett is my guest. He's a cartoon artist, very talented and indeed humorous character. Another question for you before we wrap it up: do you carry your pencils and stuff around with you when you go to a club or a bar?
All the time. It's really pretty funny, and it's a great way to meet people. I'll ask people, "What do you do for work or for fun?" And no matter
Right,
what it is they do, I can make it something that's clever and really personalized, and they love
right.
it.
That's something else we have in common because if I meet people out and if I find them interesting, and then I say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Would you like to be on my podcast?" And a lot of people say, "Yeah, that'd be great," because they haven't been on a podcast, and it's good to talk, and it gets their story out, whether it's health and wellness or like Lillian Conchore's Wills, Trust and Estates. And people learn as well. And even from listening to you today, like I'm learning as well. I did have a film guy on here from Croatia, and he's in the film world, like making films. And we talked about low cost films and high cost films and what's the difference, how the world has changed in filmmaking. And recently, too, with the act with the writers' strike, indeed, I'm glad it's been resolved too because like we do need good talent and we need live talent too. It's important. So I'm going to give you the last word, David, before we say goodbye.
Okay.
Anything you'd like to add?
Well, just real quick, some folks might be interested in the art style and
Yes.
how do you start? Well, I start with the nose. The nose is the first thing I draw, and then after that, the rest of the character comes to life.
That's I didn't know that now. So you start with the nose and I guess the eyes and the face and it goes from there. Do you do caricatures of people?
No, no. I mean, I can make some kind of an effort, and a few of them have been fairly close, especially with musicians. I have a lot of them of the Rolling Stones because
Right,
their faces are just so asking
right.
for it.
Asking for it. That's a good word. Right. Okay. Well, when I haven't met you I haven't met you live yet in person, but you can certainly draw on my nose. You'll have material to work with there, no doubt.
Well, I'm
So
sure I'm sure we'll be acquainted in New York. I'll come down for a visit.
you, we'll roll out the red carpet, and the door is always open. New York City is the most inviting city in the world, and everybody should know that. Okay.
Well, I'll buy
So
you a
I'll be
pint
happy.
of Guinness. How about that?
Now you're talking my language. That's my language. So I'm going to use my Irish language, my Gaelic language, which is my first original language until the Queen of England taught me how to speak English. And now I speak better English than the Queen herself. That'd be easy. She's dead. So as we say, as we say in Gaelic, I'm going to say Slán Abhaile. Slán go fóill means goodbye until I see you again.